On today's episode of An Askewed View, the guys reminisce about Kevin's first movie, Clerks. Stay tuned.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Askew View. I'm Jordan Brandes and I'm here with Travis Hayward.
Yeah, hey guys, I'm Travis Hayward. I'm a writer, journalist for That's My Entertainment, and Kevin Smith band extraordinaire. So we're here today to discuss, we're going to be gathering every week to be discussing Kevin's career, different films that he's directed, written, also different projects he's worked on, and this week we're going to be focusing on Clerks.
Great, the first one, not the second one.
Yes, the first one.
This is pivotal. This is pivotal because it's Kevin's very first film. So why don't we, dive into the how and the why. What is Clerks and really why is it important?
Clerks was Kevin Smith's first film ever. He directed it in 1993, I believe is when they started. Kevin had actually, he had gone to Vancouver Film School for about 4 months and dropped out after the first semester to go make his movie. And he actually self-financed it on part of the money he was going to use for his tuition for his second semester of film school. He put that into the budget as well as he maxed out, I think, 12 or 13 different credit cards to be able to, and there was also some other aspects as well, but he was able to self-finance Clerks at a budget of about $27,000.
Which is crazy that's still 12 or 13 credit cards, and it's still not that much.
Yeah. It's crazy.
It doesn't even scratch the surface of most low to middle budget films are like 1 to 2 million, and he's not even cracking 50.
Yeah, he's not even. Yeah, he's not. He's it's crazy. Not even cracking $500,000. But why it's important, I would say, because the movie really takes a look at just basically culture in the customer service industry in general. I mean, it's not just necessarily contributing to the convenience store medium. It's more so just customer service in general, and adults that are kind of at that college age. These guys are about 22 in the movie, I believe, and it's just kind of when you're that age and you're not really sure what you want to do in life, you're just working this job to get by and pay your bills for right now, and then waiting for something else to come along. I feel like it really speaks to that generation. And
I was going to say the same thing. It sort of epitomizes Gen X, I think, at that period. I mean, it really is. Gen X is sort of the generation where not really sure what's going on, no real plan. I mean, Reality Bites sort of delved into that a little bit, but Clerks puts it right under the microscope.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah, and it really speaks to Gen X, and I mean, just the people that really were growing up at that time in the '90s, and really were searching for what they really wanted to do. And I mean, and honestly, Kevin really, he pulled that from his own life. He wanted to make a movie about himself and his friends, and that's pretty much what it was. I mean, the dialogue was how he and his friends would talk to each other. So it's, he really wanted to make a movie that spoke to him and his friends and his generation.
Well, I mean, there's a lot going on here, and it's more than just one guy that just wants to make a movie. I mean, like you said, he put a lot of himself in it, but the production was, I mean, he literally put his heart and soul into it. He used the shop that he worked at. If you look at the trivia for it, I mean, he actually worked there during the day and filmed at night. He only slept 2 hours during production, which, I mean, given that, it's amazing that the film came out as good as it came out, considering he's on no sleep and trying to direct.
Exactly. And it was, and this was during a time where he was working, just at the Quick Stop, just your average minimum wage job, not really, not like most directors do. This is just their everyday job. He wasn't getting paid to make Clerks. He paid to make Clerks. So, it's really, I mean, and not just him. I mean, just the what's also impressive to me also is just the amount of people that he was able to get together and put together, because, none of the actors that were in it were, movie stars or really professional actors or anything like that. I mean, they had all had, some acting experience, Brian O'Halloran, who plays Dante, he was a local community theater actor. Same with the the actress that plays Veronica, Marilyn Gigliotti. But some of them even like Jeff Anderson, who plays the famous Randal, arguably the most popular character in the movie. He never acted before in his life before Kevin cast him in this.
Which is crazy considering he chooses the scenery every single time he's on. When he comes on with a level of confidence that most movie stars wish they had.
Exactly, and it's insane because Kevin had actually I had heard this. Kevin actually wrote the part of Randal for himself because that's why Randal has all the best jokes, all the funniest quips, and everything. Because Kevin wanted to steal that for himself. But then as they got closer to shooting, Kevin was like, "Man, I can't memorize all this dialogue and shoot a movie. What am I thinking?" So
So you sometimes you get stuff away from the Bandy project just to make sure it comes out good. Because I think that may have been the line between having Clerks be a really solid film and having it be The Room. I mean, because when you want to be like all things at all times, it quickly deteriorates.
Yeah, absolutely. And
the production was, it's crazy. I know he sold his comic book collection. He basically put all on the line. More than that, because he quit film school, it doesn't sound like he really had a backup plan.
No, he really didn't. At least, he knew what he wanted to do. His reasoning and his logic, from what I've heard him say in different interviews and documentaries, was that he was like, this is something that I have to do. I feel that I have to do this, and if nothing ever comes of it, I just wanted to be able to say, hey, I made this with my friends, and I'll get a second or third job, and I'll pay this off eventually, and then by the time I do pay it off, I want to be able to go out and do it again. So he says that was his, so that's what he said. So I'm just like, it's just.
Well, if anything, he definitely got a little bit lucky. Take a look at the time. It was 92, 93, 94, somewhere around there. And then just the rise of indie filmmakers. You got Robert Rodriguez, you got Quentin Tarantino, and Smith kind of rode that wave, and it definitely to his benefit. 10 years before, it probably wouldn't have worked, or even 10 years after. You're talking like 2003, it probably would have just, wasn't a big enough budget to hit theaters, but, right place, right time.
Mm-hmm, absolutely, yeah. And not only that, but it also kind of coincided there with the rise of Miramax at the time. So,
absolutely,
yeah, they were the ones that ended up buying the picture and ended up distributing it eventually after Sundance. And that was pre Goodwill Hunting, but Miramax at that time had I think My Left Foot and Sex, Lies, and Videotape, and just and also they just got Quentin Tarantino with the Reservoir Dogs, and so it's they really
building their empire. Yeah. For hindsight's 20/20 on that one, but at least it happened. It brought Kevin Smith into the mainstream.
Absolutely, but not only did it spawn Kevin's career, but it also spawned the careers of many other people that also work in the industry. The career of Scott Mosier, who worked as a producer for Kevin on many of his films for years. Scott Mosier just recently directed the Grinch movie,
which is a big budget CGI, with an A-lister behind it, and to go from point A to point B is kind of crazy. Now, granted, it's 30 years later, but still to come from that background.
Yeah, it all goes back to Clerks, So it's. And it also in that it also has spawned Kevin's own little universe. After Clerks, every movie up until Clerks 2, every movie from that point was all set in the same universe. So with every character interacting with each other. So it's
that definitely needs to be talked about because there's a whole lot of world building going on in Clerks that you don't really notice until much later. But even then, it's very subtle. The Rick Darrises, the cousin that went down on himself, stuff like that. The tiny little things, kind of almost throwaway jokes that somehow become pivotal points for other people and other things you never expect Rick Derris to show up in Chasing Amy, stuff like that, like to be a major plot point in Chasing Amy, or stuff like that. It's very comic book like, and to have that kind of, I know it probably wasn't planned, but to use it as a launching point was kind of genius, especially then.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and honestly, I feel like I feel like part of it kind of was. I mean, maybe not in the way that it eventually panned out, but I do know for a fact that that Kevin right after he wrote Clerks, he had also written the screenplay for Dogma. Dogma was the second script he had ever written, and it didn't get produced until much later. But
which is a good thing. Cause, we'll talk about Dogma at another time. Stay tuned, folks. We will definitely tackle that one because that's a big one.
But yeah, we'll address that later. But anyway, so it was basically my point there was, just he was really just, like trying to really establish that universe, build the universe, and he knew he wanted Jay and Bob in Dogma and everything. So, that was really my point is just, he was planning to really just kind of establish the universe here.
Right. And for what, $27,000 budget and no guaranteed distribution? That's ambitious as hell. But I mean, all right, and this is my own personal opinion, given how many films he's made over the years and how much he's evolved as a filmmaker, I still think Clerks is him kind of in his prime, at least for writing anyways. When directing is sort of up in the air, you see him learning to direct with the film, but the writing is dead on. I mean, it's one of the few films I can think of where almost every line is quotable, especially the moment Randal comes on screen, the moment Randal talks, almost all the time you can quote Randal.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Randal's definitely the most quotable character. I mean, him and also Jay and Bob. Well, Jay.
Jay, yeah. I mean, kind of walked into that one. Yeah.
Yeah. But just those two really have probably have the most quotable lines out of even I would go to say even the entire View Askew universe. But yeah, I mean, I'd also touch on, I mean, like while we're talking about like memorable bits here, I mean, like that whole 37 scene.
Oh yeah.
Where where Dante finds out that his lady's been with quite a few people. Really. Yeah, it's it's really just it's an interesting
in a row.
Yeah. And that's another thing, going back to what we were talking about before, that just kind of pops up in every film since then, and it's become like Kevin's signature like number, because I mean, even back when he was wearing those hockey jerseys all the time, that was his number, 37. So it's really yeah.
Well, and it's just subtle enough that you can sneak it in.
Yeah.
Which is a sign of good writer, right? You can still go on, you can still tell your story, but sneak in tiny little hints that the devoted people will notice and pay attention to. I mean, I hate to go out a little bit further, but we talk about the View Askew universe, and it does sort of feel a bit like, say, the Marvel universe that exists now, right? So you watch the individual films, and they're good on their own, but if you've seen everything else, it's even better. Because you'll get little offhand references that don't really mean anything if you haven't seen them, but if you have seen it, well, it just, ups the viewing experience.
Absolutely, and that's even I had actually even seen recently on one of Kevin's podcasts, he had actually addressed that. Someone had reached out to him on Twitter and said, like, hey man, these Marvel movies are stealing your ideas. I mean, not only are they in the same universe, but like at the end of every movie, it's Doctor Strange will return in the Avengers, or Thor will return in Spider-Man, or just something along those lines. And Kevin would always do that with Jay and Silent Bob will return in Dogma. So. But Kevin goes, no, I didn't steal that idea from or Marvel didn't steal that idea from me. I stole that idea from Marvel Comics. It's really, but yeah, it just it really goes back to what you were saying. Just like just those little intricacies that kind of just interconnects the entire universe. It's really just astounding how like he really, I mean, and that's another thing, like Kevin really, like there's not, at least not that I've spotted, there's really not a lot of continuity errors or like stuff that he forgot. Like he always makes a point to reference a line of dialogue from like just the most like.
Okay, but on that same point, within Clerks, yeah, there's tons of continuity and it's great, and it's definitely well thought out. But especially with Clerks, he keeps using the same actors. So occasionally keeping track of who's who gets a little bit difficult because there's, 6 actors, 7 side actors, and it keeps showing up in different roles every time they enter the store.
That is true, yeah. Yeah, because, actually, that's that was actually one of the jokes amongst the crew was his friend Walt Flanagan played, I think, like 5 or 6 different parts in Clerks. Like, he's just a different customer.
Walt Flanagan's real?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
All right, we'll discuss Walt Flanagan in the next episode.
Yeah, but yeah, so basically, what I was getting to there is like Kevin and his friends, they nicknamed Walt the Lon Chaney of the '90s because he appears like 6 times in the same movie in different parts. So.
What's great is there's this one scene, near the end, halfway through, where they close the funeral, they close the store to go to the funeral, and make this offhand reference, like, who's going to come to the convenience store at 4:00 on a Saturday? And everyone's banging on the doors, but if you look really closely, it's everybody that's been in previous scenes.
Oh yeah,
and they're looking right at the camera.
Exactly. Yeah. So, that's another thing. Like, just that I feel is amazing. Like Kevin was able to really pull from his community, because some of these people, it's like they weren't. I mean, like, yeah, the leads, like, they came from a background of like community theater, but really, I mean, like for example, just the customer that like gets mad at Randal for opening the video store late, that old guy. It's like, he's just some random dude. It's like he wasn't an actor or anything like that. But I mean, like you really get the sense, like he's just a pissed off old man.
Yeah, he pulls it off though. That's the thing. Yeah. It's such a fine line between, especially when you use community theater, between B movie and good movie, and it takes the right director to really pull that off. Because I mean, there have been so many. Like if you look at most of the Mystery Science theaters that were made on a very small budget are bad for kind of that reason. Like, you can tell when someone's not an actor. And this might be one of the few times where it works in its favor. I mean, there's a couple of points where the actors very clearly flub their lines. What? There's the lady that asks Randal if he likes the 2 movies. Before she starts talking, she kind of goes over her line, stops it, and then goes over it again. But because of how it's set up and the universe that's in, it's a random small town convenience store, it kind of works. It makes it feel more real.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Because I mean, honestly, just we as human beings. I mean, I know I do. I stumble over my words all the time. So it really, just. I mean, I feel like that's normally how we humans like talk a lot of the times. I just felt like it really makes a lot of sense to, just really capture it that way. I mean, of course, obviously it was a mistake on that actress's part, but it really,
right. But he could have
real.
Edited that out or done another take or any number of things, but he kept that in. It was intentional to keep that in.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And also, if I could comment also on the film's look as well, there was like just their decision to shoot it in black and white. It was really a lot of it when the film like kind of hit the mainstream on the festival circuit and everybody was talking about it. Everyone was like, "Oh wow, that's a really cool idea. You had to shoot black and white. It makes it look like that the movie was meant to be from the point of view."
The security camera.
Yeah, and Kevin's like, "Oh, that's good. I'm going to use that."
It's a great excuse.
Yeah, really. But in reality, it was just cheaper. That's really all it boiled down to.
Well, that just sort of adds to the argument that it was all kind of serendipitous. Right place, right time. The black and white could have worked against them, but instead it worked in his favor.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It told the story a little bit better, and it was cheaper.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So also I want to talk about we were going to talk about where this actually stands as a Kevin Smith film. And personally, like for me, I want to say that this one stands at number one for me. A lot of people would disagree with me on that and say like maybe Clerks 2 or even Chasing Amy may stand as number one, but no, for me, the original Clerks will always be number one just because of what eventually it did influence. And I mean, that also influenced me personally. That influenced just, so many different artists across all sorts of different mediums. I mean,
So you're taking the stance as a Kevin Smith purist on this one.
Yeah,
go right to the source.
Basically, yeah, and there's really even there's also, I mean, there's a lot of people that are just in the industry that may not have ever worked with Kevin or anything, but like have commented that that he really did help influence them. Like there was a podcast I was listening to where Kevin mentioned that he had met F. Gary Gray, the director of Friday, which is another popular indie film from the 90s, and he had mentioned that himself and Ice Cube, when they were writing Friday, were actually influenced in part by Clerks. And when you look at it, they really do kind of have a similar setup. I mean, Friday doesn't really deal with counterculture or working in customer service, but it's basically the whole movie is just two guys just sitting around talking, only instead of at the convenience store, it's on the front porch. So it's really
yeah, I mean, it's one of those enclosed, takes place over a day kind of. It's a bottle movie.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, here's the thing. I'm going to have to disagree with you. I love Clerks. I really do love Clerks, but it's going to have to be Mallrats for me. And I think personally, I think you had mentioned that Clerks were the first one you saw. For me, it was Mallrats, and I think that's why it speaks to me. Plus, I mean, given my own history, I was a Mallrat, especially when I was watching the film. It was just that, I was of that age. I was hanging around my local mall, and it just kind of hit at the right time. But with his films, I mean, it's constantly rotating. Depending on where you are in your life, you see the films kind of differently. And that's true of his whole filmography. As he evolves, the audience evolves, and you see the movies differently. He's one of those ever-evolving filmmakers that it really shows in his art.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, it really, and that's also another one that I hold Mallrats pretty high too, and I mean, it's really just, and in a sense, I mean, that one is probably out of all of them the one that's kind of the most similar to Clerks in that it's basically just Clerks but set at a mall.
More or less. Yeah. So we're going to take a small break to get a word from our sponsors, and then we'll come back and dive a little bit deeper into Clerks. Thanks for joining us. We're back, and now it's time to dive a little bit deeper into Clerks and really what it spawned. What were its influences and what did it influence? We talked a little bit about Friday, and it was great, but I know, especially in the 90s and beyond, it really did spark a whole indie film community. Not just F. Gary Gray and Ice Cube, they had a whole lot of backing behind them when they did it. And granted, it was, some of their first films, and Ice Cube had never really acted before, but still, deeper in the community, it really proved what could be done.
Absolutely.
I know there's this book that went around in our local film community, written by Robert Rodriguez.
You know what? I'm blanking on the name too.
Regardless, I recommend the audience look it up. It's a book by Robert Rodriguez on indie filmmaking, and it basically spawned the whole revolution at that time of indie filmmakers that proved that all you really need is a camera and any kind of budget, and you can make a movie. And Kevin, I think, is a good outcome of that. He's proof that it can happen.
Oh, absolutely. And Rebel Without a Crew, that's the name of it.
That's it. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. But anyway, back to what we were saying. Yeah, exactly, and that's it. That's even Kevin had actually even taken some inspiration from Robert Rodriguez in this as well. When basically what he had taken from that was Robert Rodriguez, when he was going to make El Mariachi, he had said that you need to shoot what you know, or write what you know, use what you have, make sure to put in your movie, essentially. So, Robert Rodriguez had a guitar, he had access to a bus, and he had a turtle, so we knew right away that he was putting on Mariachi. Kevin, saw that and thought, hey, I have access to a convenience store, so that's kind of what sort of spawned that idea.
But it's strange. I mean, I've seen Clerks dozens and dozens of times, and as we were prepping for the show, I rewatched it again, and I noticed some things I really never noticed, which is almost shocking considering how blatant it is. Watching Clerks, the vignettes are a clear nod to Tarantino. Just how he does it. It's very much Reservoir Dogs. Absolutely, I mean, it just kind of, and that's a definite Tarantino style, the vignettes.
Yeah, definitely, and and I'd actually heard that because Reservoir Dogs had happened like right before they began production on Clerks, if I'm not mistaken. Like it was 92, I believe. So Clerks, I think, started production like the very beginning of '93. So really, Kevin had seen Reservoir Dogs and like really just, kind of, and that kind of spoke to him too. I mean, of course. Like Kevin wasn't going to make this big heist movie, but I mean, he wanted to.
No. I mean, it's as much it's a homage as it is a parody. Because there's an insane amount of vignettes in there, little breaks, and most of them are nonsensical. They seem to just be there for editing choices to break up the movie.
Yeah, yeah, really. And
but I mean, yeah, I know there's a ton too. Plus, I mean, like Jay and Bob are great. I mean, you can see him building these two characters. Just the creation of Jay and Silent Bob is very Abbott and Costello, too, or any number of just buddy comedy duos. Yeah,
definitely. Abbott Costello, Laurel and Hardy, Bill and Ted.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it really just that's really like they're up there with those guys. They've become those two characters have become pop culture icons. And they are, those characters are really the center of his entire universe. I mean, they're the ones that appear.
Well, as played out by Strikes Back and Toon Reboot. Yeah, it's very clearly they are the pulse of the universe.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's insane, and they're kind of the ones that that sort of bring everybody together. I mean, when in their own movies, it's like everybody from all the previous films happens to show up for them when they've already shown up for everyone else in all the other movies.
Right.
It's really, yeah.
Tell me, like, how did this influence what came after? That's the big thing. I mean, is it just as important now as it was then? I mean, it's been 25 years, and we talked about it being kind of a time capsule. But I mean, does it still resonate now? You're a little bit younger than me, right? You're 27 or so. 27. So you were relatively young when this came out, and did this speak to you as a younger generation?
Oh yeah, definitely. It actually, it really. I mean, it honestly, it spoke to me at age 13 when I saw it. I mean, now. Not completely, and I mean, I've seen it a bunch of times since then, and it kind of spoke to me more when I was in my more adult years. But just what always spoke to me about it was, just that, because I was a small town kid, just like Kevin, and it really spoke to me in the sense where, like, you can do great things. Like, you don't have to be stuck in this, in this small town where there's really not, there's not a lot of opportunity, a lot of jobs, a lot of education. You don't really have to be stuck in that as much as you think, because Clerks really is, for the most part, at least up until the end, because the end kind of has that little beacon of hope at the end of it. But for most of the movie, it seems to have that,
Well, actually, I'm sorry, I got to cut you off. Depending on which cut, because I do know the director's cut ends at a very down ending.
Oh, well, yes. Yeah, that ending. Okay, yeah, we could actually talk about that too. That ending, the original ending of Clerks, when it before it hit Sundance, was Dante after Randal leaves the store, like where the film we all know ends. It goes on a little bit further, and a figure. It's a POV shot of a figure coming into the store. And walks up to the counter. Dante says, "Oh, I'm sorry, we're closed." And then the figure shoots Dante and takes all the money in the register and leaves Dante for dead. Credit.
It's one of the few occasions where I actually don't like the director's cut, because it leaves such a bad taste in your mouth, I guess. It's been such a, not exactly upbeat, but it's definitely been a light movie. It's one of those movies that you can watch again and again because it is so light. And there aren't really any stakes, and then he goes and kills the main character.
Yeah, and it's really, and that was actually at the suggestion of John Pearson, who brought the movie, who ended up getting the movie into Sundance. That was like he told Kevin, just take that out. If you're gonna cut anything at all out of this movie, end it where Randal leaves the store. It was, and like it just, and I mean, another thing I didn't mention this, that original ending where Dante dies, there is a little P.S. Post-credit scene on that where Kevin himself walks into the frame and
takes something, right?
Yeah. He reaches up and takes some cigarettes. That's kind of the running gag in the movie, is the customers are like pack of cigarettes, like that's all they come in.
Right. And I think the message, like, he doesn't actually have to be there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's, it's.
But I don't know. It's almost too cynical for Kevin. It really is. I mean. Kevin, as a person, seems relatively optimistic and relatively, granted, there's satire in all of his films, but it's never that dark. I mean, Grant, he has gone very dark recently, in his, was it the Great White North trilogy?
Oh, yeah.
But there's still humor in there. But, I mean, regardless, that time period, early View Askew, it's light, it's comedy. It's like, I don't know, it's like killing Bill from Bill and Ted, and hoping the audience doesn't care.
Yeah, exactly, and it's really it makes no sense for that to happen. So, thankfully, thankfully Kevin listened to his producers.
I was so glad when Clerks 2 came out to wipe that from canon. But yes, he's alive.
Absolutely, yeah, because that does not need to be. I mean, honestly, that does not need to be seen by anybody. But
yeah, you can definitely tell that there's a studio call on that one. Like, Tarantino's the biggest thing around. We need to make you like Tarantino. Kill him.
Yeah, exactly. Just crazy. Back to what I was saying a little bit ago. The theatrical ending, the one that we all know, where the kind of beacon of hope at the end is, Dante. Dante realizes just during that whole little pivotal scene where Dante and Randal have their fight, and Randal kind of lashes out at Dante, explaining, if we look down on all these customers like we're better than them, like we act this way, but it's like, we work here, so what are we doing working here if we, if we feel so advanced, we're so advanced, why are we working here? And that really speaks to, you can tell that really speaks to Dante, and Dante realizes, after all the crap that's happened today, I really do need to, figure out something and get some direction in my life. And that's kind of the beacon of hope there, where he and Randal make up, and Randal just kind of leaves the store, and Dante mentions that he's gonna go look for some other jobs later, and just kind of it really has that little beacon of hope there. So it really what I was getting to was that it does influence that generation of people that really are looking for some direction in their life, that aren't really sure, because the whole movie has that mantra of being stuck, and the movie really speaks to like, no, you don't have to be stuck. You can go out and do something awesome. You can make a movie. You can, act in a play. You can.
Oh, absolutely. It's weird. It's like the other film. Well, one of the other films that kind of define that generation I mentioned earlier was Reality Bites. That's very much one of those films where it's Gen X trying to find itself when it feels stuck, And you've got Troy and Ben Stiller and corporate versus do what you want to do, and with Winona Ryder stuck in between, and it very much feels like that. It's the generation trying to figure itself out through the movie.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, and it's well,
I mean, so here's the thing though: it's not really that can't be said of other films that define their generation, right? Because you look at Clerks, I mean, there's like a 7-year difference between us, right? And you and I still look at Clerks in almost the same way. I saw Clerks at around the same age you saw it, different generation, but I saw it around the same age. And it spoke to me like, I gotta eventually join the workforce. I gotta do this. I gotta eventually speak with customers that I may not like, and they're gonna be weird, and I gotta deal with them whether I like it or not. And this just goes with the territory of growing up. But compare that to Saturday Night Fever, a film that defined a generation, but doesn't exactly speak to. It didn't speak to my generation. I don't know if it speaks to yours.
No, not really.
Right. So just because the film defines a generation doesn't mean it's universal.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It takes the right kind of director and the right kind of script to really tap into that, and something that 3 decades later is still important. This is just me and my opinion. I have a feeling you agree with me though, that we're looking back almost 30 years on Clerks. I think 30 years from now, the work environment may change, but I think there's always going to be Clerks. And so as long as there are a workforce of some kind that deals with customers on a daily basis, Clerks is going to be important.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. And I mean, it's really, it is. It really is important that it is going to speak to all of these younger generations that really, do have to go out and do have to, join the workforce and really experience what it's like. And I mean, not just even necessarily in convenience stores, but like in call centers and restaurants and just different places where you will have to deal in a sort of customer service oriented environment. And it's I'd also say that it's important because, or at least some of the things that there are some aspects of it that do seem a little bit dated. I mean, for example, there's a line in it, what do you mean there's no ice? I got to drink this coffee hot.
Right, which a couple of years later instantly became a big issue.
Oh yeah. So it's it's really and I mean also Jay kind of the Jay character in Clerks is kind of the character has evolved over time and kind of become more of a funny guy, but in the first Clerks, he was really sort of seen as a more, at least a lot of people viewed him as like a more misogynistic, homophobic kind of character.
And a little bit sleazy, yeah.
Yeah, a little more on the sleazy side, but so, I don't think that aspect is really particularly aged well now. I mean, Jason Mewes in particular is amazing, but
Oh yeah, but to his credit though, I grew up. Granted, it wasn't a small town. It was, my high school was gigantic, and fairly close to Chicago, but it was still a small enough town in the suburbs that you got that impression of everybody kind of knows everybody else. And I knew quite a lot of people like Jay. I knew those guys. I knew the Jay and Silent Bobs. That's partially why it spoke to me. Because I was, that clique was in my high school. I knew those guys. I could relate to it a little bit. It felt real.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So that's one of the few things that didn't really shy away from. This is what life is like. These guys exist.
Yeah.
They've definitely become a little more cartoony over the years. That sort of peaked in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. But, when they started in Clerks, maybe not Bob, but Jay was very, very real.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very real, very, just a very like you really get the sense that this guy just is kind of just your average drug dealer that hangs outside the store all day. Yeah.
And he was young enough at the time that, and I guess inexperienced enough at the time that he pulled it off. You absolutely believe that he's this local drug dealer. Like, you even question the fact that did Kevin Smith just take his local drug dealer and put him on screen?
I mean, so in a sense, yes. I mean, now, well, Jason Mewes wasn't a drug dealer at the time. But,
no. But I mean,
but yes. I mean, you are right. I mean, in the sense that Kevin really did just. I mean, the role of Jay was written for Jason Mewes and was written basically. It really fit to Jason Mewes' character at the time, because I believe when they shot Clerks, Mewes was maybe 17, 18.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of looks it too.
Yeah, he was very young. Yeah, but Kevin had sort of based it on like a 15-year-old Mewes, like when he had first met him, and like a lot of those those famous lines that Jay has, like snoochie boochies and bong, and those were things that Jason Mewes would just say. Kevin just put that into the script.
Well, that goes back to write what like if you're writing something for a person, might as well just, he's going to say it anyways.
Yeah, exactly. And also apparently at the time Mewes was, because Mewes had never acted before, and he was afraid that, I don't think I can do this. I have such bad stage fright, blah, 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 and just he was telling Kevin he can't do it, and Kevin's like, but dude, it's you. I mean, these lines are literally just your personality. I mean, you just have to be you. It's not even
actually, what's amazing, and I just realized this based on what you said, all throughout Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, they keep referring to Jason Mewes as little boy, little kid. Just, come here, little boy. And now it makes a bit more sense.
That's true, yeah. Yeah, it's funny. And that actually also, I want to also mention this, that when the dance sequence in the first Clerks with where Jay and Bob are kind of hanging outside the store, and Jay just turns on the boombox and kind of starts dancing, and then Silent Bob eventually joins in with them. That whole sequence was actually shot on a tripod with nobody operating the camera, because Mewes was so afraid to dance in front of other people that Kevin had to make everyone go inside the store while they did.
Oh, but it's such a good scene too. It's only like 30 seconds on screen, but it's such a great scene.
It's so classic, and it's hilarious, just because, I mean, because it's totally believable that Jay would, just dance like that, but then all of a sudden Bob gets into it with him, and it's hilarious, but.
I mean, I guess going back to that, like, I knew a bunch of metalheads back in high school, and stuff like that would actually kind of happen all the time, just outside of school, or, by the 7-Eleven or something like that. They'd be blasting music and just suddenly break out into a weird sort of dance, but, they'd do it. And it's like, it felt like putting a microscope on my town. I know that other people must feel that way, given how universally loved Clerks is, because it's like, not just my town, it's everybody's town.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I mean, it's it's funny because, like, I mean, we'll even still see that today. It's just, I mean, they may not be blasting music on a boombox, but I mean, you see people with like their phones or their iPods, jamming like that still today. So it really. It really does. You still do see those kind of things today.
It's strange though, because I mean, you've got such almost ancient technology now, just in the background of Clerks, and yet it doesn't hold it back. Like I was looking at rewatching it. We was looking at the RST video sign. It says VHS and Nintendo, and even the person waiting outside to get the video want to be first in line to get the video. That's unheard of now. Anybody growing up, anybody born after the year like 1998 has no idea what that's about.
Absolutely, yeah, they have no idea. Because the video store would only get back in that time, the video store only had so many copies of the movie you wanted. I mean, in a lot of cases, it was just one copy. So if it was out, then you were out of luck for the next 3 to 5 days.
Well, we've had a great time talking about Clerks, and we can't wait to talk about Mallrats. We're going to be diving into each film he's done, movie by movie, and just going from there. So this is the podcast about all things Kevin Smith, and we thank you for joining us. We can't wait to have you join us next week.